Before you listen to this message, please read Genesis 1 1 through 5 and Romans 1 18 through 22. That is Genesis 1 1 through 5 and Romans 1 18 through 22. Science can be fascinating, even studying the elements. Did you hear the one about the man who was reading a book on helium? He couldn't put it down. Science can also be enlightening. No one on the face of this planet had more of a stake in atheism than Professor Anthony Flew. Professor Flew was a British philosophy professor who taught at Oxford, Aberdeen, Kiel, and Reading. Flew had a high stake in atheism, morally, intellectually, and financially. Financially, Flew wrote many books promoting atheism. He hoped to make even more money off those books. His intellectual and even ethical stands were all wrapped up in there being no God. In early 2005, that all changed. Flew proudly told the world his view had completely changed. He was absolutely convinced that God was real. Flew had won great fame as a proponent of atheism. What changed his mind? Who changed his mind? At a conference, some of the leading scientists in the world confronted Dr. Flew and had a discussion with him. They said, in effect, look at this. This is the structure of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. Does this look like something someone designed? Does this look like a work of architecture from a higher being? Flew took a close look at RNA and DNA. His conclusion? Somebody designed this. Somebody created this. The world's most renowned academic opponent of the belief in God became convinced of the existence of God, not because he didn't believe in science, but because he did. And he opened himself up to that which science revealed to him. This is nothing new. Romans 1:20 tells us of God, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. Much about God is revealed in nature. Studying the natural world and how it works, then, isn't evil. Much of this message has been influenced by the work of Michael Gillen, maybe it's pronounced Gian, his book, Can a Smart Person Believe in God?, and a lecture he had given on the topic. I doubt many people recognize the name, but I'll bet if he walked in a room 10 years ago, most people would think, I know that guy. I've seen him on television. For years, he was the science correspondent on ABC News, including frequent visits to Good Morning America. He hosted a show on the History Channel. Gillen's scientific credentials are impeccable. He is a brilliant theoretical physicist with a PhD. For several years, he taught at Harvard. He is also a very devoted and committed Christian. His father was a Pentecostal minister. His late grandfather was at one time the president of the oldest Hispanic Pentecostal organization in the U.S. He believes people should strive for high IQ and high SQ, what he calls spiritual quotient. Gillen believes we need to keep our scientific eye open and our spiritual eye open because it takes both eyes to see. Just like we need both eyes for depth perception, Gillen says we need to keep both our scientific and our spiritual eyes open in order to have that which he calls stereoscopic faith. For the next few minutes, let's examine the scientific cyclopes, those who believe in science but not in spirituality. We'll treat that word cyclopes as the plural of cyclops, the one-eyed monster. After that, we'll look at religious cyclopes who believe in religion but not science. Finally, we'll look at using both eyes together. Always remember that science and religion, our intelligence and our spirituality can and must work together. A scientific cyclops is one who believes in science but not in God or spirituality or religion. My clearest encounter with this type of thinking came when I was in seminary the first time. I took a cross-cultural course and, with the professor and several other students, went to two countries that no longer exist, West Germany and East Germany. Everyone was very nice to us in East Germany, and most of the people we met there were Christians. One nice fellow, however, said to me that he did not believe in God. He believed in science. When you drop something, it falls. That's gravity. This view stunned me because it has always seemed to me that God created the universe and the scientific laws that govern it. The fellow in East Germany believed, however, that if you trust in science, then you couldn't believe in God. That made no sense to me then, and still doesn't. That was the view, though, that was taught in communist countries in Eastern Europe. If science works, this view proclaims that proves there is no God. There's no logic in that view, only blind faith and atheism. Many top scientists believe in God. Many of those who do are Christian. The scientists and philosophers who don't believe in God might have a high IQ, but they still have no depth perception because they're looking with only one eye. Without a sense of the spiritual, they're missing the overall truth. The scientific cyclopes say that people just believe in God because it's comforting. But much of that which we believe about God doesn't comfort us. Sometimes it scares us. The scientific cyclopes talk about all the wars and deaths that religion has caused. They don't talk about how 2 million people were killed in North Korea, 2 million in Cambodia, 20 million people were killed in the USSR, and 65 million killed in China, all to promote atheistic government and beliefs. Remember that atheists are believers as well. They can't prove there's no God, yet they cling to that belief, a belief that has never been nor ever will be proven by science. If you have a friend or relative that seems like a scientific cyclops, do whatever you can to get her or him to open that other eye. A scientific cyclops may be a very intelligent person, but will never see life clearly without the other eye, the spiritual eye, open. Now let's look at the religious cyclopes. To these people, science and learning and intelligence are enemies of the faith. Religious cyclopes often promote the religious views that were popular in the Middle Ages. If only we could go back to the time before science, they think, life would be so much better. In a prior appointment, one of the parishioners there, not a scientific cyclops or a religious cyclops himself, but one of the parishioners there talked about how he heard on the Christian radio stations, all the people that went to college were told there was no God and believed it. That might give us a chuckle, but a lot of people buy into this nonsense. The truth is that in a 2003 Harris poll of people in the U.S. with postgraduate degrees, the most highly educated in our country, 85% believed in God. Science is investigating more and more the effects of prayer. Over the last few decades, institutions have emerged such as the Spiritual Transformation Scientific Research Program, the publication Science and Theology News, and Science and Spirituality Centers on college campuses. The religious cyclopes who decry science and progress, in spite of this, have picked up much steam in this nation. They are aided by the fact that the national media is only now acknowledging a little bit that people in all regions of the USA at all educational levels go to church and believe in God. Religious cyclopes paint a historical picture that claims that science and religion have always been at odds. That's not true either. Many of the greatest scientists have been Christians. Cyclopes on both sides of the divide talk about how Galileo's findings were initially condemned by the Roman Catholic Church. They don't tell you that almost all the funding for Galileo's scientific research came from the Roman Catholic Church. The Church was a patron of the sciences, and the relationship between the two was a lot more complicated than what they tell you. The narrowness of the religious cyclopes is best illustrated to me by their hostility to the Big Bang Theory. Scientists used to believe that the universe always existed, but now with the Big Bang Theory, scientists realized there was a time when the universe began. Many scientists began to believe in God, a divine creator, due to the Big Bang Theory. Once again, look at Romans 1:20. There's never been a scientific theory in history that points to the idea of God's existence more than the Big Bang Theory. Before the Big Bang Theory, scientists and non-religious philosophers believed that the universe had always existed and that creation stories were nonsense. The Big Bang Theory changed all that, pointing to God and creation in a major way. What do the religious cyclopes do with the Big Bang Theory? They ridicule it. They belittle it. That makes no sense unless you're more concerned with making science the enemy than paying attention to science's clues about a divine creator. Many of the prominent religious cyclopes spend millions of dollars to spread their message of how evil science and technology are. They do this using cell phones, pagers, the internet, radio, and television. They spread their message about how evil science is using all the technology developed from science. That's a big contradiction at best, hypocrisy at worst. If these people wanted to live without technology, they would have a right to do so. Instead, they use the millions of dollars they get from demonizing science and technology to make sure they have the latest communications equipment and the latest medical care. If you have family or friends that are religious cyclopes, tell them that God does not hate science, but has inspired it, creating the rules that govern the physical universe, the natural world pointing to God's glory. Science investigates God's natural world, and it has the power to make life better and show us more about God. Here's a great quote from Francis Collins. We'll see if I can hold the paper correctly. Yes, and you can see one of the greatest tragedies of our time is the impression that has been created that science and religion have to be at war. Francis Collins, I couldn't agree with that quote more strongly. I don't believe in God because I believe in science. That makes absolutely no sense. Well, I don't believe in science because I'm a Christian. That makes no sense either. We shouldn't worship science. Science can only take us so far, can only do so much for us. But we shouldn't neglect science or make it the villain either. So that's enough of criticizing people on both ends. Consider the positive that happens when spirituality and science don't fight each other, but both work to improve people's lives. Science and religion can never come together to be as one because their methods are very different. They need to, in that sense, remain separate. They can work together, though, because both can be used for the positive. Both science and religion have been used for the negative, but let's try to promote using both of these to improve people's lives and to better understand God and creation. Believe that science and religion are not enemies and were never meant to be enemies, but that both help people greatly. Try to improve your knowledge and your spirituality. It's not one versus the other, but both working together for the positive. In some of these recorded messages, I've mentioned COVID-19 and some I haven't. Frankly, these days, I think people need 10 or 15 minutes to focus on and hear about something else other than COVID-19. This message relates to it, though. If a man's foot is stuck in the railroad tracks and a train is coming, the man might be convinced that the train is made of cardboard, but if it's a real train, that train is going to hurt the man, maybe even kill him, whether or not the man believes it's made of cardboard. The latest coronavirus is real, no matter what some people may think about it. My address includes Chambersburg, PA. In an article updated May 2nd, the New York Times listed the Chambersburg area as the 11th in the United States in highest average growth of cases. Thank heavens the Chambersburg area isn't listed in the other column of highest daily growth rate of deaths. Look, those faraway places listed there, like for example, number 10, the Harrisburg-Carlisle area. Well, maybe not so far away places. So wherever you live, be very careful. Always remember that science and religion, our intelligence and our spirituality can and must work together. Consider the positive that happens when spirituality and science don't fight each other, but both work to improve people's lives. May your lives be blessed by the Almighty God, whose glory is revealed in creation. Amen.